gameranx presents another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and some of our thoughts on the latest games releasing. I'm Jake Baldino, as usual, and today we're talking about Outlast 2, a game, while seemingly not very connected to the original game, puts you once again in a really nasty situation, although this time I will say it feels entirely different. The only thing that does feel the same is what holds it back a little bit, and that's some element of the gameplay. But listen, other than a few minor complaints, I think this is a solid, scary experience that horror fans should not miss. But let's get into it. Outlast 2 puts you in the shoes of Blake Langerman. This is a guy who is kind of a step above a generic mute standard protagonist, and I found him to be way more interesting than the protagonist from Outlast and the Whistleblower DLC. But what he is, he's part of a two-man show of an investigative journalist team with his wife Lynn. They travel to this secluded area in Arizona investigating a strange murder of a pregnant Jane Doe. Now, because this is a horror game, things obviously go very south very quickly, and you fall into this adventure involving a creepy sectarian religious cult obsessed with God, Jesus, and killing babies and the end of days or something. Look, I don't want to get into it all because it can be kind of gross, but the story here does work. It's not too in your face in terms of details or even really in criticizing religion, but you can find more details from observing or picking up reading materials. And I will say I usually have a problem with games that put all their story and plot into collectibles, but here the basic bones of the adventure itself is still solid and it stands up on its own. It also goes places you wouldn't quite expect. I promise I won't spoil anything though, but I will talk more on that in a minute. The gameplay feels similar to the original game with a few new tricks. Again, like last time, it's all about being scared in the dark and using your camera to not only document things, but use its night vision mode to see in the dark while it drains your batteries really quickly. Collecting batteries and bandages and stuff to stay alive makes it feel survival horror as hell, and that's a good thing, and it's especially good when it's ramped up at higher difficulties. When the battery life is like extremely limited, that's when it gets real good. A nice little gameplay touch too is when the batteries are low, the night vision flickers on and off and the camera goes out of focus, making things way spookier. With your abilities now, you can also go down to a full crawl to squeeze through crawl spaces and stuff. And believe it or not, enemies can still chase you here. It really makes for some freaking harrowing claustrophobic moments where I was like yelling at the screen. I found myself yelling at the screen a lot actually, not out of fear, but out of some frustration. This is of course personal taste, but the stealth moments that usually devolve to sneaking, being seen, and then running usually devolve into trial and error. A real challenge is totally fine like it is in any game, but repeating a sequence over and over really kills the horror mood, you know? Not a huge complaint really, but a few times it takes moments that were incredibly intense and scary and it just takes you out of it completely, devolving it to just feeling like a regular normal video game vibe. But when those few moments subside and the fear and the horror comes back, it all just works. What is really good are the larger open environments. While it does contribute to that trial and error thing I was talking about, the environments look incredible and can become maze-like and very overwhelming very quickly. It's a great way to instill fear and helplessness like the original game did, but in different ways, and I did enjoy it. Creeping through or being chased through a cornfield while flashes dart everywhere, hunting you down is really a unique horror experience in a game I won't forget. They nailed it. Developers also made it a priority to give you more opportunities to hide, from stuff like holding your breath underwater, hiding in barrels, and like I mentioned earlier, the ability to crawl. It does make you feel like you can hide anywhere, but don't worry, it does not make the game easier. The sequel also gives you a new directional mic on your camera that you can use to kind of vaguely hear enemies through walls. It's balanced nicely and gives you some help while still making things feel very uncertain. And the game is relentlessly paced. While Resident Evil 7 had quiet moments of comfort and security, Outlast 2 is always pushing it and pushing you forward. It also pushes the boundary with some messed up stuff. I don't think it's the scariest game in the world, but it's got its moments, and there's some really gory, creepy, rapey, evil stuff here. This is 100% horror, and it's gonna make you want to take a shower. It also really helps that the sound design is here, from like ambient sounds to enemy sounds to just the environment and some of the intense chase music type of music. It just takes a lot from a lot of other horror staples, but it doesn't feel like it's copying anything, so it does still manage to help really kind of heighten and make things even more scary. The story goes in some great places with life, death, the end of the world, and even Catholic school trauma. I didn't expect it to go where it did, and weird sequences really up the variety of everything while also making you kind of question the main character's sanity and what was real and what isn't. While to me the game does overstay its welcome a little bit, the fact that the game keeps giving you different sequences at different locations still makes it feel mostly fresh throughout. It also looks pretty darn good. This is the PC version running on the highest settings, but it's impressive considering it's only an Unreal Engine 3 game. Light and darkness is done really well, and the photorealism of sequences set in a school look almost unsettlingly real. Outlast 2 is a good time. A few moments were way more frustrating than I would have liked, but I think every horror fan out there should play through this. It is absolutely worth experiencing. And considering the game can be scary and the gameplay is very high stress, I see a lot of people not really ever getting through to play this whole game, like the original game. And I think with that, it does live up to the name, and I think it's even better than the original Outlast, and I think you're gonna like it. You probably know this by now, but that's how a before you buy works. I give you some pros, some cons, and some personal opinion thrown in there, but now I definitely want to hear yours. Seeing as Outlast released yesterday, a lot of you have been playing it already, so I want to know what you think so far. Do you have any interesting, memorable moments? Did you get killed in any weird ways? Or maybe you're the type of person that doesn't even want to touch this game, or even found this video hard to watch. Let me know how you feel about Outlast, whether it was the original, or if you've been playing Outlast 2. Let's talk about anything. I'll be down in the comments talking to you guys, and answering any questions you have about Outlast 2, but I'm also on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram answering your questions over there as well. But thanks as always for coming around, you guys. You know, clicking the like button helps us out a ton. We really appreciate it. But if you're new, subscribing is a good idea because we put out stuff like this every day. But as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.